Welcome to episode 421 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and since we're still reeling from that incredible World Cup final, before we get back to talking about all things Barcelona, it's still time to continue a breakdown of the unbelievable, incredible, all the other superlatives World Cup final, where Messi finally climbed to the top of the international football mountain. And to help me with that is the first Argentina fan I think I ever got the pleasure of calling a friend. But now I think I can say for you professionally, the now Bleacher Report and formerly of Copa 90, it's Dave Siegel. Dave, thanks so much for joining the show.
Hey Dan, thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah, it's been a little while for you and I, so we're gonna maybe I don't think we're gonna regale too many people about our past. I think they don't want to hear about that. I mean, I look at the things that's where I get in weeds and people tune out. But most listeners will have already heard though my immediate impressions from the 5 headlines 2 days ago, and some of that will be repeated here, obviously, and it should be, by the way, because again we're recapping a match that was beyond memorable. So I feel like having reviewed that match, I rewatched it again. And I felt like in the second viewing, Dave, that match and the 2011 Champions League final, to me, have the most rewatchability of any game I've seen in the last 25 plus years. Because to me, as a Kool-Aid, Barca beating Manchester United in that Champions League final was close to footballing perfection when taking into account the modern rules and all those different things. It was Messi in his prime, the midfield trio, Dani Alves, Albiol coming back from cancer, Pep at his peppiest. But this World Cup final was a close second for entirely different reasons, actually. The setup of the match, obviously. The Messi story, of course, top of everyone's mind. But it was more than that. It was the sheer power and depth of that France squad that should have won the World Cup. It was Kylian Mbappe having an all-time performance, should have won it, probably the best performance ever in a losing effort. The way the penalty kick shootout went down with Dubi Martinez that we will get into, the number of times that Argentina had to beat France, right? It was very much the over and over and over again. So it was all incredible. And where we begin, Dave, of course, while you're on this show, question number 1, take me through the emotions. I guess from minute 1, basically it's from minute 1 to minute 70, right? Chapter 1.
Right. Chapter 1.
Right. And then it's 70 through 90, where there's chapters 2 through 4, and then obviously extra time in the PK. So just take me through the emotions of that game from an Argentine perspective.
I'll even start earlier than that. I would say that even 2 or 3 days before, I just couldn't sleep. I just literally was running scenarios in my head. I'm like, well, I know France, their midfield isn't as strong as it could be because of the injuries and everything. I'm like, this is an opportunity. Maybe they dominate the midfield. Maybe it's they've been possessing the ball a lot, in all of their games, and France really hasn't looked, like a dominant side in all of their wins, really. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is gonna happen. But then the dread sets in, and I'm like, this is France. They have Mbappe. It's they've just won. They know what they're doing in this exact situation. That a lot of the players return. So I was going through it mentally a lot for a few days. Didn't sleep much that Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday had to take my dog for a walk just to cool off before the game, just to not look at my phone, not think of anything. But then game starts, and first goal was 22 minutes in on the penalty. I knew as soon as Di Maria got the ball out on the wing and he's going up against Dembele, who not a defender. I will always yell at the TV when Di Maria just beat him, beat your man, and he listened to me this time. Drew the penalty, went nuts, just screaming at the top of my lungs for the first goal after the Messi scored the penalty. So it was. I was still very tense because it's 1 goal lead, no guarantees there. But that second goal, a counterattack against a team that you could argue wasn't attacking, was just an absolute set me over the moon. The touch from Messi in the midfield, and then the ball to Alvarez, and then the cool, calm, collected finish from Di Maria. Oh man. I had a lot of people texting me oh, let's go. We got this. It's over now. France is doing nothing. And I just I texted a few people back. I'm like, do you know this team? Did you not watch literally 6 days ago when they played the Netherlands? This is far from over. But game went on, and then I think France registered their first shot 70-ish minutes in.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, that's like they can't not let France have a shot the entire game. So I was like, as long as they're not making any stupid mistakes defensively, I think they have this like pretty much in the bag. And then what happened? They made defensive mistakes stupidly. So first one, the penalty. Uh, I feel like it's just like Argentine destiny that you do something stupid in defense, no matter what. Like every game I've ever watched, there's going to be something that goes wrong, and that's just how it is. Like ever since I've been watching this team. So when they score the penalty, I'm like, okay, that's why we were up 2-0. We were up 2-0. We still had the lead. But I'm sure Dan, 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in soccer.
Of course. Especially in knockout competition.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Especially again, like a week after watching the Netherlands game in the quarterfinal. Like I was like, no way it can happen again. But and then it happened again, and it's just again another kind of defensive mistake from Molina. I think it was on the right where he just got wrong side of Mbappe on a real simple kind of just give and go kind of thing, and Mbappe is just he's a freak. A soccer monster that just happened to get not even like a great ball back to him, and he just punished you because you literally made one step in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I kind of got angry. That was my anger stage of emotions. I kind of threw my hat that I was wearing pretty angrily, scared my dog, who hid under the bed the rest of the match. Then I was like, let's get to full time, regroup in extra time because same kind of thing happened in the Netherlands game where no way is France going to just keep piling on pressure now that there's like less incentive to do so. Like now it's a whole new game. You're just playing a 30-minute game at this point, so like you can't take as many risks going forward. You gotta but I think Argentina definitely had the advantage because France made so many attacking substitutions, taking defenders off.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, they've already, dominated the midfield first 75 minutes of the game. If they can, get, they are prone to a counterattack. If they can score on a counterattack, that's great. And then on the goal there in the like 108th, I think it was. I was yelling again, mostly because Argentina's supporting cast around Messi attacking in recent tournaments has been bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like at least for players that play out for at least on the national side. Like you have like Gonzalo Higuain, who set a record for scoring in Serie A a few years ago, and then just completely just forgets how to score a goal when he plays for Argentina. Players like that. So
of course, yeah, you're living the past. You're living the past of the failures.
Yeah, exactly. And then like even in this tournament, Lautaro Martinez has missed some sitters.
Yep.
In the group stage and everything when chances to put games away very early on were wasted, and then you have to sit through a nail biter for the last 15 minutes of games, and it was that's exactly what it was. I was biting my nails, but Lautaro took the shot that he just kicked it as hard as he could at Lloris, and Messi just right place, right time.
Yep.
Great finish.
But arguably one of the worst aesthetic goals of his career. To be honest with you,
I mean it's with his off off foot, his right foot, and it's just kind of dribbled over the line. But I don't care about aesthetics at this point. They've already just scored maybe the goal of the tournament at their second goal earlier on, with that beautiful team counterattack. So I don't care. They could have all gone in like that, and it would have been like fine, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a World Cup final. But again, like to know Argentina is to know pain. So I knew exactly what was happening. Like as soon as France started pushing everyone forward in the last couple minutes of the game, and like I think those last like 5 minutes of game time, like from the penalty call to the end, were just like I was not even like looking at the TV.
Yeah.
That's just like I saw the Mbappe take the shot and I saw it blocked and I was like, this isn't good. Like I just knew like in my heart, like this is not like that's a handball. Like I've seen players jump like that. I've seen it like and they called it right away. So like at least it wasn't like a VAR situation where they had to like dissect it by like every camera angle, every square inch of like if it hit his arm or not. But and I knew he was going to score. Man, again, he's a soccer monster. He's a freak. He shouldn't be allowed to play soccer. But he scored, and I was I just kind of went numb for a little bit, and I was like they're either going to win this now before it gets to penalties, or we're going to lose in penalties because I was just like.
See, I wasn't with you there because I think for the PKs, I understand from your perspective, but PKs, once Messi put in the first, like and Mbappe answered, sure. But once Dybala made his, I mean, it's been interesting in this World Cup because usually the one who goes second is the one that keeps winning, and the one who starts is the one who loses, which Argentina did. But once Dybala put his in for some reason, there was something about Kingsley Coman, and this podcast is not a safe space for Kingsley Coman. Google his name, just type it, just Google his name, say bad, and it's not going to give you highlights. It's going to give you some of his off the field stuff. And once he missed his, and Dibu Martinez then gained the psychological advantage that I think he really had when Coman stepped up to the line. Not to say that I was calmer, but I definitely understood what could have been coming next, what should have been coming next, right? And then obviously Paredes hits his, and now it's 3-1. And once it was 3-1, because as you mentioned, I mean, the weird thing about Argentina was when they were making their final substitutions, right, by putting on Dybala, who had barely played in the tournament, but is a great PK taker. They put him on, and it seemed like Argentina found a way, even though they conceded in the 118th minute, they found a way to make their substitutions and prepare themselves for PKs in a way that France did not. Where France took off some of their experienced players, and we're just trying to win it in extra time. Right? They would try. Well, they tried to win it in regulation, then they tried to win it in extra time. I think so. While the penalties, of course, stressful from your perspective, there was a sense that Argentina, by having to win it 3 times, were always on the front foot. They were always a team that was closer to winning it, including having a guy in Dibu Martinez who has become. I mean, obviously, when you talk about PK goalkeepers, he has put himself in the upper echelon in terms of the legend of that.
Absolutely.
Right? We always think of Tim Krul, the old Newcastle.
He's
always the first one I'd say because, I mean, is he a great goalkeeper? I mean, no, he was a bum average goalkeeper. But boy, could that guy figure out.
That famous substitution where he came in just for the penalties.
Yep.
For the Netherlands. But it's I think again, probably like what you said, when Martinez stopped the Coman shot, I was like, okay. Again, I wasn't super confident on everyone else making their penalties.
Right.
But I think when they go up 3-1, that's when I was like, okay. Like after, I forget who missed it. It was
Chouamani. Because
Chouamani. Yeah, Chouamani.
Once I saw Real Madrid players step up, I was like, well, either this is going to count for 2, because that's how it works.
Yeah, no, that's how it works.
Or he's going to miss it.
I think, and then I saw some videos after the fact of Martinez just like playing some mind games with Chouameni where he just took the ball off the penalty spot while he was walking up, held on to it, and then just like rolled it away just to like make him walk an extra, 20 yards to go pick up the ball. Like,
yeah, stressful moments. Well, I got it wrong too. I want to correct this. Sorry, I got myself backwards. It was Mbappe who shot first.
Mbappe went first.
Messi answers, right? Of course.
Yeah, Messi answers. Yeah,
Montiel wins at 4-2.
Right
after Kolo Muani.
And I was also nervous at the coin flip when France went first because I read some statistic that something like 60% of teams that win it are teams that shoot first.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this can't be good, and I think Argentina may have been even at a disadvantage because they had already done the penalty kicks, like that.
Right.
The goalkeeper might know where they're going and stuff. But I love Hugo Lloris as a partial Tottenham fan, but he's also awful at saving penalties. So,
well, I said I think there's a little bit of a narrative fun. Again, there's so many little points here from this game.
Yeah.
You can point to like the romance of it. As I said, I think the romantic poor finish not even poor finish, but the romantic rebound goal that Messi scored. I think the romance of that idea is that, again, Messi has scored all these beautiful things, but the goal that in theory was going to take him over the line was,
an ugly thing that he kind of bumbles over the line for sure.
And even when he scores the PK in penalties, as I'm thinking, I'm saying, oh, the boy who was made in Catalonia scores against this goalkeeper who was born in Catalonia, right? It was made in Catalonia against born in Catalonia.
Exactly.
And they know each other. They can speak Catalan to each other, right? And
exactly.
Those are all those little romance things to me.
Yeah.
So, Dave, I do want to talk a little about the tactics here. Then we'll get to the sporting cast as we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you brought up a lot of interesting points. I think where we begin, is the beginning. And going into this game, the choices obviously was to start with a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2-2. I mean, a 4-4-2.
4-4-2, yeah.
And I love how I was watching Tifo football, and so I want to give them credit on this one. I love how they called it a 4-3-1, one being Di Maria, one being Alvarez, and one wild card in Messi's position.
Right.
Because that's what it was. It was a 4-3-1-1. One, but the one is kind of this.
Yeah.
So the interesting tactic that Scaloni, why he went with the 4-3-3, I think the concern was Mbappe, but I love the fact that by using Di Maria so wide, it forced France into difficult decisions horizontally, not even vertically, horizontally, to take Mbappe out of the game by forcing him to defend. The only time Mbappe really been taken out of games was through that means, because Theo Hernandez, they also kind of use that against him. Lucas Hernandez, his brother, is a bit more defensive.
Yeah, for sure.
More gamble, but because Theo Hernandez gets farther forward and Mbappe, obviously both of them want to get high, that forces the center backs to come over. And that includes Koundé, who became the right center back. But with Di Maria wide, that meant that Koundé either had to shift over or Dembélé had to defend Di Maria, which we've already covered as he gives it the PK. Right. That's not his skill set. He's gotten better at defending, as Barca fans know, over the last 18 months. But defending Di Maria in the box is a bit too far for any winger who's gotten to defending in the middle of his career. That's not going to happen. So what this allowed Argentina to do, it allowed Argentina to have their most significant movements of play through the middle, which, again, Kool-Aids will know, if you control the middle of the field, you should win these games. But they control the middle of the field vertically, which is so essential, right? It's not what Spain did. It's not what these possession teams did in this tournament, the ones who didn't seem to have that final phase. So it was either Enzo Fernandez, who is adept at those line-breaking passes, or it was McAllister as a left interior, the position where you have both space and Messi dropping in perpendicular to you is always an outlet. And DePaul also, as I've covered before in this podcast, and I've said on the 5 headlines, DePaul basically being Messi's shadow. He was close in that diamond to protecting Messi if Messi lost the ball, which is also why, oddly enough, on the second goal, when Messi lost it out as wide as he did to Coman, there was no immediate backup plan to stop that Coman cross from coming in, which is interesting that France was able to capitalize on the one moment when DePaul, in theory, was out of position because Messi, in theory, picked it up out of position because it's one spot on the flank where he did on the touchline or on the sideline. We wouldn't expect Messi in that game to start his positioning or start his move. And I think this game was also enjoyable and is rewatchable because of Argentina's desire to play through the middle. That's what made the game interesting. So obviously things kind of come off the rails for Scaloni when he switches that 4-4-2. When Acuna comes off for Di Maria, and Acuna, whether through injury, we also know he had been great in the beginning of the tournament, Saudi Arabia, but once he picked up that knock, it hasn't been great, and he clearly wasn't physically, I think, ready for the moment the way Di Maria was. Oddly enough, Di Maria was also kind of coming back from injury, but he was more prepared than, or seemed to be fitter than Acuna was. And then, as you talked about, by the end of regulation, Argentina is totally gassed, and they're the ones kind of hoping to get to extra time. But as you kind of mentioned about Argentina is pain, and about this Argentina team does, not just the Netherlands, like looking back, even though they had won, 35 straight until Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
The buzzsaw that is the great Saudi Arabia team. It has kind of been Argentina's MO, though, tactically. This isn't just like the emotions and the vibes, right? This is actually tactically against Scaloni. Their MO has been to take a lead, I mean, that's why 35 games straight
Yeah.
is pretty good. So they take that lead and then they try to sit back and they try to counterattack, which is
Right.
how they get the second goal. It's through that counterattack. But again, their issue is that by getting into their shell and settling in, I mean, when we saw this throughout this World Cup, settling into your shell was not the way to get
No.
anything. Because again, the argument for Morocco is that they were not just a defensive side. They were a side with elite wingers and particularly elite fullbacks who have a
Yeah,
willingness to get forward and beat teams on the counterattack. And I
for
think,
sure.
to kind of sum all that up tactically, the big question, of course, that I'd like you to try to kind of step out of your Argentine boots and take this World Cup in totality here. I think the most important tactical lesson to be learned from this World Cup, it's not that possession styles are bad, because obviously the team that won possession, with the exception of Argentina, by the way, in the final, the one who takes the lion's share of possession, wasn't seeing the results that we
Right.
don't expect. In fact, they were losing the games and losing their knockouts of
Yeah.
but you also have to be. It's not the position is bad, but you also have to be elite at counterattacking. Which I think Argentina, yes, they scored that second goal, but they aren't necessarily this elite counterattacking team either. It's that I think teams that can play different styles that support where you are in the game, right? So it's not if you come out trying to counterattack and the opposition is better at counterattacking, you're going to fall to the sword. We saw that
Right.
as well. I think Ecuador was the one that
Right.
wound up
Yeah.
conceding to was Senegal in that wild game, because like both teams came in and were like, oh, we're gonna have the same idea, and then one idea has to be trumped by the other's
Yeah.
individual abilities at times. So I think obviously we also consider that you have the most success in a knockout tournament when you can play different styles,
For
when
sure.
every game has to have an ultimate winner. So not to neuter down what we take away or a big takeaway, but because just think of every penalty shootout or every extra time as just a draw, right? And that would have been a lot of draws in this knockout stage. And I was, as the Kool-Aids and Premier League teams or whatever, if you follow one of the big clubs in the world, if you got this number of draws that some of these teams were getting in the knockouts, I mean, it's hell and high water. Like everyone is going insane because this team is sputtering. They can't figure this out. So when you ask what can you take away tactically from this World Cup, I'm not sure what any club manager, especially Xavi, should take away, other than the fact that the teams, we've seen it with Real Madrid the last few seasons, unfortunately, in the Champions League. We've seen it with Liverpool, actually, when they had their little run, if you will. And Man City is working their way towards it. And I think this Man City team, in the way they are now, can do it. But teams that can both absorb pressure and come out with elite counterattacking. Obviously, when you have a player like Kylian Mbappe, and that's the whole thing with France, France played well for 2.5 minutes of 120 minutes. For two and a half minutes, they were the better side. I mean, maybe a little bit more at the end of regulation. I give them a healthy 25 minutes when they were the better side. But really, 25, 30 minutes of 120, they were the better team, and they still took it to penalties because you do have Kylian Mbappe, right?
Yeah.
Not every team has Kylian Mbappe. So, I mean, it's a much different thing where you're going to try to have to possess the ball, and you're going to try to break down a team like, I always say Cadiz, but they're the great example because that's the way they want to play. And this year they're failing it. They're failing at stopping teams breaking them down, right? But last season they stayed in the Liga because they found a way to defend for 90 minutes, and they come away with a draw. So yeah, Dave, when you step out of your boots and you wonder about the tactical nuance, not only of this game, but the ways that throughout this whole tournament, that it shifts the different phases of play and what each team did bring to the table, but the fact that unless you could do all of it, you didn't seem to have a way forward.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent way to look at it. And like you said, Spain has, had games where they had 80% possession, and then they're out in the quarterfinals. You have other styles, like you have Brazil, where they were in the game against Croatia, like they were, again, 2 minutes, 3 minutes from victory, and instead of choosing to set up shop and hunker down, they're going for flair, they're going for a second goal, and it bit them in the ass, and then now they lose in penalties. So I think, like what you're saying, like tournament style play, definitely you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to not play one style of play. And like you said, Morocco was an excellent example of that. They're it's Morocco, it's little Morocco, and they have, their whole thing was we're going to play defense first. But you have Hakimi, you have Ziyech, you have game changers there as well that, they can, on their day can beat anyone in the world. And that's, basically how they got as far as they did. You know, um,
Well, I do want to play devil's advocate just a little bit, actually, from the Barcelona perspective here, because you can actually argue that because Barcelona are pretty myopic in the way that they like to set up their style, especially how Sergio Busquets kind of forces you to play a certain way as well. Like that's
mm-hmm.
also a big thing from this World Cup to take away from Spain. That Barcelona are leading La Liga because they're the best version of what they can do in the league when teams cannot stop the way that they play. But there's a reason why they have crashed out of Champions League. There's a reason why they can't seem in knockout competitions to get over it, because Barcelona, unlike some of these other teams that do go far in these competitions, while they may not have the top shelf of one style, except again, like obviously Real Madrid is an elite counterattacking team. That's what they do. Manchester City is elite at both possession style, not even a possession style. I don't want to neuter it down and call it just possession style, but
Yeah.
where they're using the ball to destroy you. I mean, that's basically like the whole
Yeah.
thing. The ball is our weapon. And because we have the ball and you do not, that we are going to beat you through different passages of play, through the middle of the field, on the flanks, and using positional play to its we'll say it's intellectual end, right? To overwhelm teams to beat them. But they haven't won the Champions League yet. I mean, again, they did make the final against Chelsea, and then in one game things happen. But again, for Barcelona, I think the thing to learn is that for these knockout competitions, there has to be some kind of elite plan B. And because of Barcelona's financial situation, some of the other names and people that they've wanted to bring in, they haven't been able to do that. So their squad, because of financial restrictions, have limited them in saying, well, we have a plan A, and we have to hope that our plan A works, because we have not been able to have the financial metal to afford a plan B in a competition like the Champions League. And so I think that would be the one lesson. But I don't know what Barcelona does with that until they figure out how to make some money again, which is going to be now maybe another year. So, all right. But back to this individual game here. I guess not to start from the beginning, but as this game was changing, right, the 4-3-3 to 4-4-2, I know obviously emotionally in it, you're not like trying to be like, oh, is McAllister's position ever so to the left or something like that, right? But going into this game, how did you think Scaloni was going to set up, and were you surprised at the way that was set up?
You know what? I don't think I was. I did think maybe they would have gone with a back five for a second, because that's how they lined up against the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, it made sense more for the Netherlands game, because everyone on the Dutch team is so much taller than everyone on the Argentinian team. So I and the more I thought about it, going up, doing a back four against another back four, where you can now, force, you can have Di Maria come in, and then you can force Mbappe to defend, as much defending as he does. But, he's not going to have as much free reign, So I think, pushing, lining up as they did the 4-3-3 or the 4-3-1-1, whatever you want to call it, I think it made tactical sense, because, like you said, that one flank of France was ripe for the picking, with Mbappe not being a defensive player really at all. You saw earlier in the tournament, Deschamps is yelling at him for not getting back. I think it was against Poland at the end of the game, just yelling at him to track back even a little bit. And then of course he goes and scores a worldie, and just, it doesn't matter at the end anyway. But I think and with Hernandez in there as well, and not his brother, I think you take the chance that you can get behind, and you can exploit that flank more than you try to just put in three center backs and to try to just deal with Mbappe. I think that's when you start to almost concede the fact that Mbappe is really good. We need to allocate more resources to him. I think the plan was pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned a bunch of the supporting cast and kind of the decisions that had to be made with the supporting cast. And so it is interesting to me, the way that this Argentina team, and I think this should be the narrative, the way that this Argentina team is built in support of Messi in a way that others weren't in the past, even though in theory they were. But, he has his inner circle that I was reading about, the ones that he would always have his lunch with, that Carlo Icardi wanted to break into. And then not only was he not able to break into the inner circle, but they were like, not only that, but we don't even want this guy in the team anymore, and he's
Yeah.
out. But I'm talking about Mascherano and Biglia and Aguero, and Di Maria's kind of been there the whole time.
Right.
Obviously, from scoring in the 2008 Olympics and those two won together, 2021 World Copa Americas, of course, and then a ton of Copa de Ligas with PSG. He seems to be, and it's weird because one game can change that kind of reputation. Where to me, I didn't really consider Angel Di Maria a big game player because no offense to PSG, but any trophy they win, I don't consider a big game, right? Like no offense to them, like it's what happens when you I mean, you're owned by a country. It's, I mean, literally the Real World Cup. But anyway, that's the point. Like, I think in one game, Di Maria, people are now like, hey, the 2021 Copa America kind of made us feel like he was a big game player. But now that he's done it in a World Cup as well and comes up in this moment, now it's like the whole narrative of his career has changed. And then for some of these guys too, right? Like Dubi Martinez, Arsenal since what 2000, and he came when he was like a teenager, like 13 or whatever. Then he goes out on loan for like 8 years. Finally, in 2020 gets a chance, and then finally he got enough of a chance to get a move to Aston Villa, and so that's his level now. And you'd assume, and then even Rodrigo De Paul and Noel Molina. I mean, for Atletico Madrid, I watched them a ton this year. Like everyone's saying about how Rodrigo De Paul was like Monstar this year, how he's like wasn't himself, technical ability was off, and for the same thing with Molina, where Molina. Not say he's still unproven, but he fits well at Atletico Madrid. He's played well under Diego Simeone, but because they as a team have not been what we expect from a Diego Simeone team and their results haven't followed, I think you came into this going, is Molina really like, is he as good as what we've seen from right back in years past? But then again, you can actually look around and ask Montiel. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess like Molina became the starter over Montiel, even though Montiel, of course, the PK at the end there.
Right.
And then you kind of mentioned Otamendi and said, oh, it's an Argentine way to make a mistake. But no, it's not. It's actually an Otamendi at 30, whatever it is, 34 way to make a mistake. Because we watch him with Benfica, where you're right, he can have 85. I mean, that's what Otamendi is, right? He's 83 minutes. He was always probably about 78 to 88 minutes of a quality center back, even with Man City. But Otamendi, now at the point in his career, he's 78 to 82 minutes, exactly solid for you, right? And then it's like 8 minutes where you're like, oh, what? It doesn't know what's going on. But he's still good enough for like 82 minutes to get it all done. And then same thing actually with Christian Romero, who's your Tottenham guy, that I mean, even for Tottenham, there are moments when you trust him, and there are moments that you don't. But for him, at least he's always tall. Like that's always something that's helpful. He doesn't get any shorter. And then obviously the last two I kind of want to talk to. Well, I also want to mention Julian Alvarez, how important that is, and as you said, Lautaro Martinez. I think actually him coming on in extra time was, or the end of regulation, wherever he came on, was really important to getting that attacking punch back. I mean, that's why. For sure. That's why that third goal was scored by Messi, because Martinez was able to add something. And if not for Upamecano's just insane two tackles by Upamecano, then Lautaro Martinez, those were both on target, which is something that you can't say for his other previous misses. Like because those were on target, they wind up scoring the third goal. So, but then the decision by Scaloni after Sergio Aguero, by the way, this was them within the tournament. Sergio Aguero goes on his Twitch stream, and he was there with ESPN Argentina, and he's at the World Cup on his Twitch channel talking his stuff, and he winds up saying, I don't know why Lautaro Martinez is starting over Julian Alvarez, and then he has to see Lautaro Martinez like in the locker room the next day. I mean, that could have really like blown everything up. But then interestingly enough, that next game, Julian Alvarez, that's when he gets in the starting lineup. So it's like the coaching staff agreed. It seemed like everybody had this, even though, you know, you have one of these players who's basically your mascot, your 13th man, or 27th man is like criticizing your starting center forward, and all of a sudden what happens is what happened. It seems like Lautaro Martinez had to put aside his ego and say, well, Aguero's right, you know, even though it wasn't fair for him to do that. The coaching staff agrees. Julian Alvarez, because of his movement, I've talked about him on a previous podcast about what he and Messi and what that has meant, and we've done the Ferran Torres thing. I'm not going to rehash that. But then the last two guys I want to speak about here, I mean, you can talk about Dubi Martinez too. I could do a whole podcast on him. But talking about Alexis McAllister, who they're lolling about Brighton, but Brighton has been decent this year.
Yeah, they have been.
McAllister has not been, some standout player in the Premier League. He is a young player at 23 who can follow directions to the absolute letter. He can follow tactical directions. So for Brighton, their success comes on the fact that they have a system, they play their system, everybody commits to it and buys in. And if you have a player like him at 23 who has lungs for days and can completely buy in, that's what McAllister was good at. Is there any one elite skill he has? I'm not sure. But his positional sense is very, very good. His technical ability is good enough. His work rate is good enough. And that's what he is. He is good enough. Yeah. Now, the last one is Enzo Fernandez, obviously, young player of the tournament, who we can, again, I'll let you rehash the thing that I keep saying, that it's insane for a club like FC Barcelona or really any team to spend more than 80 million on a defensive midfielder or a pivot. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we saw that 88 million for Tchouaméni from Real Madrid was expected behavior by them. I would have loved it. I mean, obviously, I've said my piece about Tchouaméni and how excited I would have been for FC Barcelona to get him. He would have been the perfect replacement of Busquets and all that stuff. But for Ende Fernandez, an interesting one that if Barcelona does scrounge enough money, they won't in the summertime. But let's say somehow Benfica is like, hey, give us 120 million we want, right? Because that's what Benfica does. They always ask
Yeah.
for a high transfer. And if they're able, and if they do that, right, and he's available next January when Barcelona finally has some money, or he's available next summer somehow. Again, somehow after this performance, is a club not going to buy him up? Obviously, he's going somewhere in the Premier League probably, or he's going to. Well, I don't think about Bayern, but he's going somewhere. We know that.
Yeah.
We know he's guaranteed to be bought. And Benfica will sell over the summer likely. But Enzo Fernandez has completely impressed me. Like in all of these terrific ways, he has impressed me with his ability to play balls, with his ability to win balls, even his 50s on the ground. He isn't that tall, but he's so much what the modern pivot is being asked to do. Like very rarely are these teams sticking with one pivot. Like there are times when McAllister would drop in, Rodrigo de Paul would drop in, but because Messi as well, when they had the ball, would drop in. Alvarez, like you had so many players that could fill that midfield that it all made sense. And Enzo constantly had support in a way that Busquets doesn't often when either Frank and Young's trying to get forward or whatever, what have you. But boy, Enzo Fernandez really impressed me as one of the players of the tournament. And again, it's so interesting because in tournament play, how do you adjust? How do you view these players? And it's almost opposites. For me, McAllister, I respond to how amazing he was because he was terrific throughout this tournament. But I recognize that I wouldn't go out and spend 50 million on Alexis McAllister, right? I still think he's a 25 to 30 million euro player. At 23, maybe he can get better, but I think that's who he is. And he played amazing in this tournament. Well, Enzo Fernandez, I think all of what we saw from him is he is here to stay. He's 21, probably going to be getting better. And I don't consider that just a blip of a tournament. I think all the things that he did and showed you in this tournament are completely applicable to a higher level. That's why I said if Barcelona had 60 million next summer, you go and you spend it on Enzo Fernandez.
He, like you said, he was doing everything this tournament. Like you said, he's winning balls. He's playing the pivot. He's playing cutting passes, winning 50-50s, scored a banger against Mexico.
Yep.
Like, that's like a world beating, that's Memo would show in the World Cup. Like not too many things are getting past him when he's playing, for Mexico. So out of his mind he played. And the same thing for McAllister. Like you said, like there was no one skill of his that was like a standout skill. Like they're like, oh wow, look at his passing. Oh, look at him. Look at his vision, whatever. But like, I genuinely can't remember like if he's put a foot wrong. Like his positioning was incredible the entire time. He never looked lost. You never saw like a ball come over the top. Like, oh, where's our defensive cover? Where's like our midfield? Like he was always there. And you know what? He had the assist for the Di Maria goal. It's not always an easy pass in that exact moment to, but he laid it off absolutely perfectly.
Well, I would argue too that he was the only player that played 120 minutes for Argentina in the final. I think when you say didn't put a foot wrong, I think that's actually the perfect way to sum up McAllister. That he from minute 1 all the way to 120, he was the only one I think was totally with it. There wasn't a single moment in that game when I was like, oh, McAllister isn't in this game right here, like in this game where he needs to be and doing what he needs to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. He was. I watched back most of the game and no notes. Like good job, 10 out of 10 for positioning, awareness. No stupid fouls, no like horribly misplaced balls. Like he had a job to do. He did it, and he was rewarded with an incredible assist. So
so Dave, finally we'll wrap it up. We didn't really talk about Messi, which is incredible. But I want to do Dibu Martinez, and then I think I've done Messi. We've done Messi many, many times. But we'll close with Messi. But Dibu Martinez, I said a little about his story about the Arsenal stuff, about becoming the keeper. But I think I don't want to overstate that the psychological advantage matters, because I think usually it doesn't. But in this case, it absolutely did.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely does. And I think for Dibu Martinez, again, he is a knockout competition goalkeeper, right? And that's what he is. Is he a solid goalkeeper in the Premier League week in and week out? He's fine. He is.
He's fine. No, yeah, he's an
Average.
Aston Villa goalkeeper.
Correct.
He's
But
exactly what
Argentina,
you.
he's going to be a god. They're going to make a statue of him.
Yeah, no, I mean, you knew like before the tournament started, every single player coming out saying like, "Yeah, I want to win the World Cup, but like, I want Messi to win the World Cup."
Mm-hmm.
Like that was kind of like the whole team motto is like, whatever we have to do to get Messi to win this. But
do you think too that like that idea throughout the years, I felt like the 2014 World Cup in particular, where it was like everyone knew that, but at that point in his career, it was like, hey, we're still like we all are players on our own merit, right?
Right.
It felt like this was the first time because I mean, you look at it, Enzo Fernandez, 15 years old, writes a letter to Messi.
Yeah.
When Julian Alvarez,
like 9 years old,
wanting,
right?
wanting an autograph, right? It seemed like this was a team that was fully aware and fully willing to admit we are doing this for this guy. Like we are doing this. This guy can ride off in a sense that as a legend that he is to be considered the greatest of all time by where we kind of close the chapter. I mean, try to close the book on that argument. So I think it was very helpful psychologically to Argentina to fully commit to saying we are playing for Messi. I'm a good player. Sure, I play for Man City or I play for Atletico Madrid or I play for Benfica, whatever. But we're doing this for Lionel Messi. Like, let's just all agree that's the way this is going to be. And do you feel like, do you agree with that this is like the first time where a team was like, I'm not worried about my transfer fee over the summer. Like, I'm just telling you this is what we're playing for.
Yeah. No, it definitely. I mean, it worked because they won, right? So I think they realized that I mean, the entire Argentinian FA has been like an absolute shambles, in like the last, from the Maradona coaching years to like
Messi retired from international duty.
Yeah, like, he stopped playing. Like he's like, I'm done.
On that, I had podcasts on him retiring back in like a few years ago. Look back and hear it. Like he was done. He was like, I don't like how they're being mean to me. I don't like how they're treating me. And while we've heard some pretty good interviews too with like Argentine journalists and things, and of course the one that the Argentine reporter did a few days ago about how wonderful like what Messi has meant to them. But he also like with the trophy is running through the mixer yelling about how he doesn't like journalists and how awful the Argentine journalists were to him through the years. Right? There were some that he likes and he works with. And he was much more front facing this time as well, for better or worse. Like Messi.
No, yeah, this is the first time I can remember Messi in an Argentina shirt expressing an emotion that isn't anger.
Well, I was say the Riquelme celebration against Hull. I think what's interesting is that was a moment, and I think people are like, "Oh, Messi was like." Even in the mixer afterwards, when he was going after Netherlands, and Verst, he had a word for him. But I felt like when he did the Riquelme celebration, it was like almost like a Dragon Ball Z. Like this was his final form. Like this he is calm when he needs. He's completely in control of emotionally, like the emotion timbre of the game. And while the team. And, we've heard this too, how when he was even Barcelona captain, you're like, why isn't he yelling at anybody? Where is he? Like, why is he talking? You're like, oh, he's leading by example. And there was always a thing about Messi as a captain. But in this tournament, he was unequivocally, and I think we say this because they won, sure. But I would say not. After the Netherlands game, it was pretty solidified. Even after Saudi Arabia, apparently he's the one who yelled on the team bus. I mean, reports are he's the one who yelled on the team bus. He's the one who yelled in the locker room. Scaloni, being a former teammate of his, has kind of stepped back and say, Messi, I mean, like, they're going to listen to you because, again, they're admitted they're playing for you. So you tell them what to do, and they're going to do it. And so when he told them to get back up on their feet after Saudi Arabia against the Netherlands, again, he told them, we remember Argentina. We don't forget. I remember what you did to Riquelme at Barcelona, this place that I was at.
Yeah.
I was 14 when that happened. I remember what you did. Or no, I was 14 at the time.
Yeah.
I remember what you did to my idol Riquelme. And I mean, it was just, there's so much. There was so many layers of Messi at the time. And I think that's, Dave, what makes this so enjoyable. Why I cared so much. Why, no offense to Riquelme and Koundé, who are Barcelona players currently. But I mean, Messi has given me so much joy. And it was what I said on the 5 headlines too. Who is this for? Right? Like we could say on the internet, this is for all the trolls, all those who doubt him and all those who fight, not even Ronaldo FC, but also like the arguments about Pele, right? Like back in time, is Pele as good as Messi, or all those people that say that Messi might not be the best of all time or he's the greatest of all time, right? Is this for them? I think at the end of it, I had to say no, because again, like it's my understanding of Riquelme in that situation and Louis van Gaal, and like again, having done my research on all of that stuff of Barcelona's past and having been there, like watching Barcelona at the time, that it was like there was so much into the heartache of Messi again retiring from international duty, and this game even having to win on 3 different occasions, right?
Yeah.
This game was a culmination of all that Messi gave to us, all the people who cared about Messi and watched him, and those who watched him against Sporting Gijón in the mid 2000s, or watched him against Sadafe through getting the living beat, whatever kicked out of him for the last whatever years in the Liga. Then PSG, they're a little nicer than them in Liga. But anyway, like getting, just all those games that you didn't need to watch in the Copa del Rey or the Spanish Super Cup or whatever. And the things that everybody else missed and we got to enjoy because we loved watching Messi for the last 17 years. Yeah. And this game really did, the story, fairy tale endings don't matter in football. It doesn't matter. You don't have to end it on this beautiful, ride off into the sunset. But because of the way that this crescendo, this game just had its ebbs and its flows and its valleys, I know that emotionally, you had to buy a whole new set of underwear after this game. I understand that, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
But again, I think this game was a perfect culmination. And then I'll let you kind of have the final word on Messi. But this was a culmination of everything that kind of we've been through with Lionel Messi, like the ups and the downs, the defending him whenever he didn't, when the best player in the world who's supposed to always win every game, when he wasn't able to. And now finally he gets to the top of the mountain in the final chance he has to. I think that is just what makes this so emotional. That's
for sure.
I mean, that's that final breath you take and you feel like very rarely in football is something completed. Like again, Barcelona, his ending at Barcelona. It feels awful. Like it's like still stuck.
Yeah.
It always will be. He's never coming back because Barcelona can't afford any contract for him unless he's 40 and he decides to come back and Barcelona have money. But yeah, because that didn't end the way we wanted it to. So much of football doesn't end the way you want it to.
Right.
This ended the way
it did. Yeah.
Like there's no next chapter. He said he's going to keep playing, which is fun. But it's like we can all like very rarely do you see football without anything, right? Where it's just like there are no stakes here. Like very rarely is that the case. So it ended. It culminated in this moment that just you don't get.
Right. It was like, I mean, storybook is what everyone is saying, but you couldn't have scripted a better just tournament, really. I mean, like it's not only that it's Messi's last ride and everything, but it's also this new up and comer Kylian Mbappe with France, like the next heir to the throne of the GOAT debate, or you could argue, and the fact that they're trading goals in a World Cup final, and they're
I want to wait. Mbappe, I want to throw in there that Messi at 21, we already admitted was one of the best players in the world, right?
Yes,
and we did the same thing with Mbappe. He won a World Cup, right? He was already doing it for Monaco and PSG. I get that, but I think we're kind of forgetting 14, 15 years ago. Like I was there. Like Messi had already ascended. That like he was already there. Like no offense to Mbappe, who's 24 now, and he is one of the best players in the game. It's him. It's Haaland. I think there's a 1-2 for what's coming in the next 4, 5, 6 years. But like, I just want to remind people that like Ronaldo and Messi, where they were, is above where Haaland and Mbappe are.
That's
now. Like, I want to remind people. It was a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you mentioned that too. It was I think it was like 2002 or 2003. My grandparents had gone to Buenos Aires on a trip, and they always brought me back a jersey. Mm-hmm. They brought me back a Messi jersey, a Messi number 18 jersey. They're like, he's gonna be good, don't worry. Like I've heard rumblings, and of course they brought me back this like ratty knockoff thing that they've bought off of like some street vendor in Buenos Aires, but it's still like one of my most cherished shirts today, even though it's like the most knockoff thing that you could buy from like wish.com today. But
listen, my wife knows not to wash jerseys. She knows. It's not even about a luck thing. It's just it will fall apart.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've had to wash. This is my Copa America final shirt from last year, and I've had to wash it a couple times because I've just worn nothing but jerseys this month. So, but yeah, we're on gentle cycle where hand
washing. That was the other thing. As an adult, you learn hand washing. You put it in the sink, you let it soak, and you wash your hand, then you dry it. Like that's where to go. Just
that's the play. Okay, yeah. So
Dave. So as we do wrap up, though, if you have anything more to wax poetic about Messi, and then again in Argentina, I mean, yeah, now that you're in your 30s, you've seen it, you've seen the World Cup, so there you have it. But yeah, I mean, I think the final question I'll give you is where does Messi go next? I mean, the options are he can renew with PSG, comes to Inter Miami with Busquets. Obviously, can't return to Barcelona. That's not an option. Or
No.
he goes and fulfills his promise. Like we keep not talking about those old boys here, but I want to remind you, like what he used to
You're
say.
right. Yeah.
He used to say for a long time, but it seems to me, unfortunately, you know, that he's going to renew with PSG. I think that's where it's
That's.
going. They
Mhm.
have just so much money to throw at him, and also again, his as people don't want to kind of poo-poo it, his connection now to Qatar, not only through the World Cup, but obviously because
Yeah.
QSI owns PSG.
Right.
So I think the idea that he's going to leave PSG this coming year is not happening. I think it's going
No.
you're going to be up
Yeah.
for
Yeah. And as much as I would love to see him in Fort Lauderdale with Inter Miami, uh, tearing up, the Montreal Impact or whatever, or Montreal FC, excuse me. Uh, yeah, I don't think he's leaving a Qatari-backed team anytime soon.
Well, I think he's going to get the 1 year renewal. They have a +1 anyway, and I think they
Right.
want to sign a +1 to that, which I think he'll do. But the idea has always been too that he's going to come to the U.S. in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing I was always thinking too with this World Cup, he even won a World Cup, and as I've said many times, if Messi ever speaks English, the internet's just going to break down. I mean, I don't think we're going to be able
Yeah.
to get. But anyway, speaking of the internet, people can find you on the internet down in the show notes below. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Again, we are on Twitter and Instagram too at the Barcelona Pod. Hilton D13 for me. Closed Facebook group. You know where to find that. Answer the questions. I let you in. I am working through the Discord as well. I do appreciate, for those who are still here, you're probably the ones in the Discord too. So if you're on the Discord, I'm working the best I can to figure that out. I got some mods helping me as well. So we're trying to get out all the kinks there. And then our Patreon is how we keep making these shows. I do appreciate as the numbers kind of have dwindled in this time, all those who stuck with us through World Cup coverage. But a reminder, 11 days from now, 12 days from now is the new year, but 11 days from now, Barcelona are back at it. So I'm hoping that, in full voice, everybody's back. But in the meantime, if you could share the show, all those different things, especially the YouTube content, 5 headlines, I'm going to jump back into the match reviews the way we should do. So those 5 headlines are coming right back as they did for the semifinals here in the final of the World Cup. Most importantly, though, again, we didn't do a lot of Barca here, but Lionel Messi, the greatest player in FC Barcelona history. You can debate Pele or whatever, but there's no debating he's the greatest player in FC Barcelona history. He owns every record possibly could. So, of course, I was rooting for Messi. Of course, most Kool-Aids were rooting for Messi. I think the ones who weren't, well, they got a different of course, I was all in on Messi winning the World Cup. I mean, he's right behind me right there. You can see, yep, over my shoulder. There he is. So most importantly, though, thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon and Forza Barca.